right. Good afternoon. My name is Gary Yin again. Thanks to Mario allowing me to share some of the research things we did, and I appreciate it for my first opportunity to come to this beautiful island. Really enjoy everything so far. This topic, multi-objective optimization, just to give you sort of the ideas how popular now this day. Out of the eight speakers we have today, not counting Mario's, we have 4 individuals who have done quite extensive work, including Xin, Hisao, and Piero. So that's 50%. And as you can see, I think it's difficult not to overemphasize that how important it is. Going back to my experience, in 2006, I served as general chair for the WCCI in Vancouver, Wiki conference. That time, I was pretty exhausted, going through the whole process, and eventually come to the conference days. In one of the, I forgot, I cannot remember exactly which day, but one of the section, then I decided to sneak into one, the very quiet, small section room, just try to hide myself, give me some moments of sanity. And then I was stumbled into these topics, the multi-objective optimization. I has, just like Mario say, being studied the neural networks, neural controls aspect of that, and never have anything about evolution computation. I only heard about Xin Yao's names all the time, but that's all I know. And here comes, that I was really enjoy, and for the things that I studied, and turned out it helped a lot of my research on the fault tolerant control as well. So I just want to bring up to your attention that 2 years from now, we're going to have the next version of the WCCI Wiki Conference in Beijing. So this is a very major event, so you should know that, mark your calendars, because over there, you're not only going to hear a lot of research, most recent update on your technical area, but way beyond, way beyond. Every year I can always see something very exciting coming out of horizons, and the area of the multi-objective optimization continues to be a hot topic. I was unsure that exactly how much background our audience have, so I will just quickly go through some of that and then try to bring up just a few issues that I thought might be interesting for some discussion. It's a very simple problem, so much simple, it's very generic that's almost everywhere. That anything's an optimization problem, usually involving more than one objective, is what we call the multi-objective. And now, particularly when those objectives are competing or conflicting with respect to each other, so that when you optimize the performance of the one, and then the other's objective will lose their performance at the cost of that, obviously. And so clearly, you are looking for some sort of the trade-off among all these objectives. And those are what we're talking about here, searching for the set of the suboptima or the Pareto optima solution, and then try to decide which one will be the best suitable one under that dynamic scenarios. So it's important. I thought I might just give you an idea, the very simple example that I thought it helped us to understand how real this problem is. As an engineer, I only believe that we are trained, we invest our time to solve the problem with a real purpose. In this case, for example, buying an automobile. Now, if I would just try to emphasize only 2 deciding factors, only 2, obviously there are more than these 2. For example, one, I want to minimize the cost, and second, obviously that I want to increase levels of the comfort. If there's a way I can quantify that, for example, in terms of the percentage, whatever that means, for example, making it a lot more comfortable. Today's the modern vehicle, it's just incredible. It drives almost for you. Parking assistance, the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, satellite, GPS, everything, and obviously anything that go along with that will bring up the cost to be higher. And obviously that we want to lower down the cost. And if you do expect to pay less, then you shouldn't expect there will be too much of the luxury equipment to go along with. And now, for example, if taking these 2 criteria, if I can find the ways to quantify every possible models available in the markets in terms of these 2 objectives, the cost, and the correspondings, the comfort label. Then that every point in that area of the blue region corresponding to a car model that you can choose from. The question is, under this scenario, that everyone making decisions based upon different trade-off criteria. Some, for example, if they are not, capable, richer, professors, maybe they will go with the higher ends. They will go willing to spend $100,000 to get all the way, maybe up to those Ferrari, Lamborghini kind of the, wonderful sports car. But for those poor graduate students living on the fixed amount of the support, those cheaper ones will still be as good as you can afford it. And that's what we're talking about here. If you look at these point here that corresponding to this car model, given that amount of the money, and you shouldn't choose that kind of the cards corresponding to that dot there. You should go all the way up there because given amount of the same expense that cost, you should be able to push that degrees of the comfort to much more higher. And instead, you're going all the way to that point of the, I think I cannot see really, the C here is that corresponding to the car, whatever that is, and that will be the best choice of you. And we are talking about not only one solution, but many of those solutions located on this Pareto optima front that will provide you the best solution under the different trade-off. So the idea here is thinking about if we possible can identify these collections of this Pareto optima solution and provide that to the decision makers. So the time when this choice has to be made, depend upon how much money that one has, then it will decide what will be the car that you should purchase, will give you the highest amount of the comfort label. Or for those who are very specific about the equipments that one car has to have that convert it into the corresponding comfort label, then you will know that corresponding points that the car model you should purchase that will cost the least. And this is that deciding factor we're talking about here. And numbers of these objectives in the reality will grow to a very large number, and so making this problem a lot more interesting. And I think this brings up some of very interesting issue here is in our community, the CI, neural fuzzy evolution computation as well, that we are shooting for some of most difficult problem because those are the problem that no existing traditional technology will be able to deliver a quality solution. On these cases, that evolution computation, which largely spawn based upon populations of the candidate solution, and through some heuristics metaphor that going through this evolution or iterative process in order to search for the better solution. And those are the things that we think that possible could make a difference in this community. Mathematically, all this this optimization problem is pretty simple, straightforward. You can easily see that we are optimize an objective vectors, which is the vector functions of the decision vectors, and then subjected to some constraint, equality or inequality as well. And notice that a lot of problem that has been touched on by Piero's mentioned about the dynamics constraints. For example, those G and H could be function of the E environmental state, and those constraints were changing along under the times or even under different events. The same thing F will change too. So these cost functions that could changing. So it calls a moving target that you have to continuously tracking on this optimas. And there's also this approximation there to describing the uncertainty that could easily impose because of the incomplete information that we have about the objective function. So everything's optimization problem per se, you will be able to see it from here. And that's just to the degrees of the complexity that there's no existing technology would be able to do anything closer. And those are kind of the problem that we believe that this evolution computation paradigms that provides one viable, one very unique solutions. A lot of these ideas of the designing this evolutionary algorithm largely based upon the so-called the Pareto optimality. Basically, we are searching in the large space. You have to know picking any two solution. You need to know which one is better than the others. And that allows you to know the directions of how you continue to search from. the way how these betters, these concepts is largely based upon the so-called Pareto optimality. What it defined is that according to these definitions that, you could, as long as the one okay, I have a little bit trouble to see everything here, that all the dimension that one individual has to be less or equal to the other, but at least one of the dimensions will be strictly less. And so under these formulations, there are many evolution, or we call the multi-objective evolution algorithm, have been developed in the last decades. And the things has been progressed very well. But we begin to find out that when we are step closer into the practical problem that involving usually even higher dimension, now a lot of problems begin to emerge. And those problems largely, and I begin to think about that, this problem largely based upon because of the way how this Pareto optimality is defined. And again, it's critical to be able to say who is better than who when two solutions are being compared with, and so that we know how the search process will continue. And obviously this is the process that how things begins, but we begin to find out when the numbers of the objective, in these cases, products, they just randomly generate initial population for the particular problem. And you will see that when the numbers of objectives begin to grow beyond 5, and then most of these individuals, they all becomes non-dominant according to Pareto optimality with respect to each other. And so basically what it means is everyone is, equally good as respects to each other. So that presents a critical problem. There's no selection pressures in this evolution population to allow us finding the direction to go. And so there's been a lot of interesting research now when people begin to look into the so-called the many objective optimization. This problem has to be dealt with. Here's some comebacks just to show you that there are clear distinctions between the so-called the single objective optimization problem. In most of the cases, aggregating methods usually the way, try to combining multi-objective into the single one through the assigned weights. And in these cases that there are clearly a lot of problems. And we can see that these, for example, in here we are looking for not just one single solution, but many of them. And they are not only just one goal looking for the optimal solution, but in these cases, because you are using finite samples to approximate the continuous front, that could be multiple segmented, it could be the non-convex, it could be many of these problem characteristics. But in order for us to be able to representing those kind of the fronts, you need good numbers of that. And usually that entails that solution has to be diversified, which means each one have their own representation power, and they are as close as possible. So because of the understanding of this Pareto optimality, the design has always been emphasized in searching for the algorithm that can give you the so-called convergence and then the diversity result, the convergence and diversities. And those are the two design philosophies usually dominate this community, and there are many things available today. Here I just simply outline, the classical methods, those aggregating methods that if you do so, that's a problem. We will have trouble to solve any kind of the multi-objective optimization problem. I don't think I need to go to any details. And this is where how the inspiration came along so that people begin to look into this a little bit unorthodox population base of the solutions. And there are many new members joined these families as we speak. And every year I hear a lot of them something new. And the other day, one of my colleagues was just talking to me that from the chemical engineering without any idea about this evolution computation. After participating in one of my students' PhD exams and come back to tell me that he has this leapfrogging idea. And he even simulated that, showing some very successful result in terms of the searching in the single objective optimization environments. But just to give you that, there's a lot of nature wisdom that's being available, and today we begin to tap into those nature wisdom and try to explore the paradigms, the metaphor that they have to help us to better solving our engineering problem. And again, in order for us to be able to show that we can do something really about it, we are always shooting for a very, very highly complicated problem. And just to give you an idea here, this is the particle swarm. We just simply created a population of some individual, and I will just allow them to, you can see quickly following these, the paradigms, the way how the particle swarms goes, following the leader through the social and cognitive behavior, and then easily that they can find some quick solution. But again, this is a single objective. This is not something we will be really proud of ourselves. And so a lot of people just really move into finding what have to be done in order, for example, changing to the PSO, in order for these to be suitable for the multi-objective optimization problem. And this is a long, long list of the ideas that has been proposed, and that's not something I would like to spend time here. And this is certainly a very, very active research the domains that I would highly encourage. One thing I want to talk about here today is about the so-called performance matrix. In this community, in order for us to be able to come to the point that we feel our design is mature enough that could be used to solve the practical problem, the real-world problem, we have to begin with something called the numerical study. So people created artificially these benchmark function. Each of these functions exhibits certain problem characteristics, allow us to be able to test our designed algorithm to see how good they are. And obviously that in order to compare a number of these competitors' different designs, we need to create some sort of the performance matrix in order to be able to quantify their success. And again, this is something very interesting because the way how this Pareto optimality goes, it always emphasizes the convergence and the diversity in these two aspects. And so as a result, most of these performance matrices, they are created in order to quantify certain aspect of that. Some do both in certain ways, and the others does in some other way. So somehow we're always trying to create measures that we will be able to quantify the success of the design. And again, here this is the way how this goes. If someone's come up with an algorithm, okay? If I develop an algorithm in order to assure my papers, my design will be able to well received by the panel reviewers in order to put the paper into the TEC, IEEE Transaction Evolution Computation as an example. We have our ex-editor-in-chief there. So there are people always expect you to do something, to do some comparison, which is well justified. But this is the problem here. And because when this MOE has been created, this is usually the way how the common practice is being done. We always choose numbers of the benchmark problem, and then in order to quantify the performance matrix. And then based upon the set of the very heuristically chosen the performance matrix, then the proposed MOEA, whatever you have, and then obviously that you're going to choose some of the competitors, and then that will be put into a fair test. And then you're going to run that multiple times in order to arrive some statistically meaningful conclusions. After that, you draw the conclusions. And then always the conclusion is the same, although the function chosen was not necessarily the same. You always draw the conclusion that your algorithm is better than the others, but this of the betters is usually under the ideas of that, hey, the functions that I choose and then the matrix that I choose are all decided by me. I am the one to decide it. And so this is under this world conditions environment that I will be able to perform very well. So it's always been a debate, how exactly who is better than who. And is it there really a very fair process that we will be able to say how one is better than the other. And that is what the original idea that we have, just try to have a better understandings. And besides, we all understand that in these no free lunch theorems, basically mean is any algorithms elevated performance over one class of the problem is exactly paid for in loss over the other class. So basically mention that there's no single design that would do the best for all kind of the problem, for all problem. And so on the other hand, what you could really say is every problem, they may have some of the specific category, classes of the problem. The one design will do better than the other. Now, unfortunately, the problem here is that usually the author by themselves, they don't even know what will be it. And so our goal originally is try to find a fair process in order to quantify how one is better than the other, or amount of numbers of the candidates. And then leading to possible that maybe we can reviewing some of these problems, the characteristic that one algorithm will be able to do the best. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is, can we try to identify that the problem characteristics that one class of these designs would do better than the other? And in these cases, when the real problem is exhibiting with some sort of the problem characteristic like that, then we would know which algorithm, which design, or which class of the design that you have a better chance to be very successful. So this is just to show you a very simple case study. And here I choose 5 of those state-of-the-arts. Well, those who are familiar with these designs will know them very well. The first 2, NSGA2, SPA2, those are the very well regarded sort of like the standards in the community. And there are some things coming up a lot more interesting. And the numbers continue to grow. There's just no way I will be able to show everything's possible here. And for example, MOEAD is one very well cited algorithm now. And I am purposely not to choose our own design in order to confuse, to complicate the process. And here I choose the 6, that's quite a few, the benchmark problems, including 2 objectives, 3 objectives, and even up to the 10 objectives. They are indeed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they are indeed 9 benchmark problems. And in this case, 5 different performance matrix. Each one of them try to quantify one or maybe multiple specific the quantity in terms of the convergence and then the diversity. And so we hopefully that under these 5 different categories of this performance matrix all involved, then possible that we will be able to see the real truth and to decide it among of these 5 different algorithms exactly who is the best. And so the idea then go back to for those who being involving with a lot of sporting activity, you always see here that something called the tournaments. And basically, you go through that pool of these competitors, and you try to pair them together through this either the single eliminations, or sometimes, very occasionally, you talk about the double elimination in order to decide ultimately who is the winner. For example, in the USA, most of the university all have these basketball team or even the football teams. And there are so many teams, and exactly who is the best at the end of that. And so there's a process always involving with so-called March Madness. And some of the 65 and 60, well, I don't even know how many they've been chosen now, but good numbers of those teams being chosen and then go through the single elimination process in order to decide who is the ultimate winner. And I thought that will be some good starting point and amount of the way that we try to make some modifications. So here, this is what we try to do is for the same initial population, we're going to present an initial population to all these 5 algorithms, and then allow them enough times to be able to arrive at non-dominant front. So each one of them will create a solution. And we're going to repeat this 50 times. So the same initial population will be used to exploit the problem characteristic under that quite difference. The problem that we mentioned, the 9 of them, and then a randomly chosen the performance matrix, one out of those 5 will be decided to find out of those 5 fronts that was created out of from the same initial population who will be the winner. And so allow me to be able to decide it 50 winner out of 50 independent trial. And the reason we have that many is in order to arrive at a statistically meaningful process. And so now I would have the 50 non-dominant fronts to begin with. And let me just to give you an idea for this ZDT1. Out of these 50 fronts, and you can easily see that this is how many winners out of this particular algorithm. SPA2 accounted for 19 of them. And then SGA2 has 11. So you can see those processes involving each one of those 5 performance matrix has been called for in different numbers of time. But the way how this was chosen and as uniformly randomly chosen, so it's pretty fair process. And obviously that we are not doing this just once in order to be able to write some meaningful process. So out of this 50 fronts, then we go through the double elimination process. At the end of this double elimination process, one of these particular fronts will be doomed as the winner. And then we'll go through this process to decide the second winner, and then continues to go on. Okay, this is the double tournament elimination process. So basically, I begin with 50 fronts. Then I'm going to pair them into 25 pairs of the binary tournament. I will have 25 winners, I will have 25 losers. And out of those 25 winners, because it's an odd number, so I'm going to randomly pick one out of those 25 and set that aside. The remaining 24 of them will be paired into 12 pairs of the binary tournament. And so there will be 12 winners, 12 then across the one I set aside to give me that 13 winners that will go into the winner brackets in the next period, next rounds. And those who lost already up here, you will see that they are in the loser bracket. They lost against, then they will be lost twice, and that's what we mean by double the eliminations. And those will be eliminated from the pool. And some of those winners are coming from the winner coming from the loser brackets, and then those losers coming from the winner bracket. Each one of them lost once. That will not be eliminated, and they will be paired against one from each groups in order to go through these 13 pairs of this competition, and allow us to be able to eliminate again. If one lost twice, it will be eliminated forever. So basically, this is the process what continues to go. Allow us to trim this process. And you can see that in this process, that's just the first rounds. The IBEA begin to lost in all the candidates. And it means that indicating that there are some concern that for this IBA that will be able to handle the problem characteristics that this kind of the problem has to offer. And this process continues to go around to allow us to take the 13 winner, 13 loser to go through this process. Again, throughout that process, out of all these 50 fronts, if any one of them lost more than twice, then it will be eliminated. Anyone who lost just once or not at all will remain in the pool to allow them to continue through this competition process. And this just to show you that on this process that we begin to see the way how each one of these algorithms responded to these competitions. Number 3, okay? And because I promised to Mario that I want to save more time, so I quickly just run through this result. You see that at the end of that out of these 152 pairs of these minor tournaments, that we will be able to decide that SPA2 seems to offer the overall winners. And here now, out of these 50 fronts, that 18 of them came from the SPA2, 18 of them. So those 18 fronts will be eliminated from that original 50 front. The remaining 32 will go through that process in order to decide who will be the second winner. So I'm just curious, for example, this is the kind of the ideas, the process that try to identify who is the ultimate winner. So I decided to go out to pick another test function. The test functions, in these cases, exhibit the same problem characteristic like this ZDT1. And believe it or not, the SPA2 continues to be the winner. And we do this 35 times. And each one of them, the conclusion is all the same. It's the same. And so out of those possible 9 different benchmark problems, the SPA2 seems to show as a consistent winners for all those problems in the ZDT1 and ZDT2. And for those who are familiar with those benchmark function designs, the ZDT1, ZDT2 are with a certain different problem characteristics. So we begin trying to think, if we were possible be able to categorize, cataloging the problem characteristic, how one algorithm will be respond to that. So for example, in this case, SPA2, we find out that it's an overall winner for the ZTT1, 2, and they both have these Pareto up the fronts, that their fronts are the continuous. And then IB8 and the PASR2, they were lost in very, very early stage. And so in these cases, should we be able to come to some sort of the conclusion that SPA2 seems to be able to perform pretty well in those problem characteristics that we thought it might make perfect senses for that. And in these cases, so I decided to look into why we want to do the double elimination. The reason is because if you are choosing a round matrix, in this case, for example, S matrix, if it is being chosen, then the SPA2 will never get a chance to become the winner. Because out of those 5 different matrices that we have, that's only matrix failed to deliver that. And again, every matrix just provide a different aspects of this to be able to quantify how the algorithm perform under the specifics criteria. And so it's very, very important to us that we feel it has to be very, very careful in order to exercise these kind of things. And so continues to go, NSGA2 win always in the ZTT3, and we even in these cases try to create another NSGA2, which is exactly same implementation, but label that in a different names, and then allow them to compete. And we find out that one of 50% one and 50% of all these 2 different implementation will win, and they show no bias at all. NSGA2s that indeed showed up that will perform pretty well in those problems have the Pareto optima front that were consisting of several non-contiguous, the concave fronts. And then these here show MOEAD. That's a very, very new problem, exhibits a very good performance in the problem that was lots of the local Pareto optima fronts. In the Pareto optima solution are the uniformly distributed. And this is the IBE8. It seems like this IBE8 has some very nice property that can deal with the high dimension of the problem. And so there's a lot of interesting for us to begin now try to understand is it possible that I will be able to cataloging the specific problem characteristic, how one algorithm will perform the best. And so that, again, when I'm dealing with the real world problems, if there's a way that I will be able to understand better how these landscapes look like, maybe it give me a better edge to choose a proper design. And now it's interesting here is, it turns out that most of the real world problems, they all exhibit combinations of multiple problem characteristics. And so now going back to what I said earlier is, now can we find a way that I will be able to combine multiple designs into the single framework so that this algorithm will be able to provide, will have the same problem characteristic, the same probability to solving those kind of the problems that we try to challenge it. And so this is very interesting, and we'll continue to look into that. And the remark here is having no single matrix alone that can faithfully quantify the performance of given MOEAs under the real-world scenario. This study is intended in order to reveal that the insight, that pertaining the specific problem characteristic that one MOEA would perform the best, and for a given real-world problem. And again, repeat that what I said earlier. And so in these cases, that if I would just try to put myself on the spot, thinking about all this possible challenge that we could try to approach, and I still believe that in a larger framework that evolution computation, indeed, is we are still sort of lacking on these groundbreaking application with a smashing success. I was just really, really curious, surprised because those who attended the wiki in the Brisbane will remember Mikulovich in his plenary talks. He mentioned primarily talking about that we don't have any successful real-world applications. And you hear a lot of them from Shin's the research and from a lot of other people's, but we just don't get enough visibility, the publicity is out of that. And this is something probably as a society, a professional society like IEEE CIS, it's probably something we really ought to spend time try to make sure that would not be the case. And in this process of the technology growth, things come and go. The CI is really a collection of the toolbox that we have to collectively help to develop it for such a long time. It's really not like the problem domains, like what's those our sister society like control, like signal processing. They have the specifics, the problem domains that allow them to, as long as they are there. But we are the technology providers, and it's very, very important for us to be able to show that our technology that will be able to solve some problem nobody else can't. And that's, I believe, it's very, very critical. And there are a lot of force being moving towards the many objective optimization. Many objective optimization from problems going to a high dimensional. There are a lot of things become very, very interesting. So even I mentioned the Pareto optimality is no longer a viable way of quantify who is better than who. And those has to be changed. And how do we handle the constraint and uncertainty, the dynamisms? Those are all the issues that I know many of our colleagues been working on that. And also very interesting to see that up to this point, there are so many things going on. Can we find the common grounds on the science perspective to be able to describe all this algorithm in a universal language, and so that we will be able to understand better? And again, education is a very, very critical issue. We really have to spend time, and I'm very happy that Jenny and the society has been, continues pushing a lot of on this part of the, aspect, helping our younger students to understand what is the neural networks, fuzzy logics, evolution computation. And so with that, I would stop right here.
Questions for Gary? If you press the button, there's a microphone so everybody can hear you. The big one.
Yeah, I just wonder whether you have a paper on the results.
Which result?
On these experimental comparisons.
Yes. I hope that will coming out TEC very soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question. So, the multi-objective optimization, it seems to me that it's heading towards that it has reached a climax, or that it has reached it's very well established, and it's currently used in a lot of research. And there are a lot of algorithms, and there's already algorithms embedded in MATLAB. And so, do you think that there is still room for improvement? I mean, how much room do you think there is for improvement?
Oh, I think there's a lot of room. Yeah, that's why so many people continues to work on that. Many objectives, for example, HISA is really pioneer on that. It's one very, very exciting issue, because when a lot of the real world, the real problem we deal with tend to be much, much higher dimension. I'm talking about just five dimension, and all these existing algorithms are incapable, just deficient in solving all those. So everybody, it's a progression. So we begin with something that we can solve, for example, single objective. Okay, in those paradigms, we are excited about the way the metaphor, the particle swarms, the ants, colonies, all these things continues to show the potential. And now we move into the aspect of taking that to solve the multi-objective, and now to so-called the many objective. And a lot of research being done already on the constraint on the dynamics problem. Those are real things. I came from the fault tolerant control community, and that's the reason I try to do this, looking for a quick research of this optima solution when the dynamics, the structure on dynamics change, and how you're going to deal with it.
Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And we move on to the next speaker.